Hey, it is Friday happy hour. Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is lovely to be here with you each fortnight. We are now here on the Your Strata property page, live for happy hour, enjoying a Friday wind down, a Friday catch up on the week that was in Strata with a beverage in hand, if you are so inclined. How is everybody doing? If you are here, give me a hello in the comments. Let me know. I would love to see you and know that you are here with me today on Happy Hour. How are you going around the country? We are still feeling reasonably relaxed, I think, here in New South Wales. Our dear Victorian neighbours not as relaxed as we are, sadly, at this point in time. I know we have a few Victorians who tune in here regularly, so give us a hello and let us know how you're doing. Are you okay? You're hanging in there, guys. We are thinking of you. We are waving from far away. Just stay, yeah, if we can. That would be good. But we are all getting through this. Happy hour here and there helps us along the way. So it is good to see you. I'm seeing you all come in now. Hello, Sean, and cheers to you. Good to see you. Hello, Emiliana, you are here. And Emiliana is saying hello to our special guest today. Yes, we do have a very special guest, Rob Broadhead from 2020 Fire Protection. I will be bringing Rob on very soon. Scott is here and looking forward to it. Sean is here. You're all here. Have you all had a hard week? Have you all been hanging out for happy hour? Maybe now that we are here fortnightly, you're missing your happy hour on the off week, especially if you're in a place where you might not be able to nip down to the local and have your happy hour. I am very pleased to be able to offer you virtual happy hour. I am going to give you a few updates, what has been happening around the grounds, if you like. Really a couple of events, actually, excitingly, that are coming up that I want to make sure you're aware of. First of all, some of you may have seen me post earlier this week, a couple of nights ago on the Facebook page. This is an update on what's happening with the pet cases, the keeping of animals in Strata cases in New South Wales. It's something that we've talked about a fair bit here on the page, on the podcast, and during happy hour. I had a chat to a current affair about it a few weeks ago, and as a self-confessed pro-pets strata lawyer, it is something that I have a vested interest in, let's say that. I want to let you know that I have heard from Jo Cooper, who is in the Horizon building in Sydney. Jo has let me know that she is appealing the NCAT decision that upheld the bylaw that bans pets in her building. And Jo has also been chatting to Sue Williams at the Domain about that appeal. And we know that Jo has set up a GoFundMe page to assist with the funding of her legal action. I did post a link to that page on our page here a few nights ago. If you wanted to check it out, if it was something that you were interested in supporting, it is something that I have supported. As I said, from my point of view, this is a part of our law that does need change. And I say that quite openly as a pet lover, pet owner in Strata. So letting you know that that's where Jo's at. A few of you have contacted me wanting to know what was happening with those proceedings. And so I am happy to give you that particular update. I think Rochelle is going to put the link there in the show notes if you wanted to check out Jo's page. They are not show notes, Amanda. They are comments. We have show notes when we have a podcast, and we have comments when we are on Facebook. It is hard to keep up. And speaking of keeping up, something new that is happening, something I haven't done before, and something that I think I need to be up to date on when it comes to conveyancing, the sale of strata properties, the purchase of strata properties. I have been invited to present a webinar for the Australian Institute of Conveyancers. Not something that I have done before, and I want to give a special thanks to Amanda Bennett at Elan Legal for recommending me and for introducing me to the Australian Institute of Conveyancers. I want to mention this webinar here today because I know a few of you on this page are conveyancers, are agents, are lawyers who are doing conveyancing for strata properties, and perhaps are managers who are connected to these people. And it's an area that we talk about a fair bit on the podcast, needing to improve the education, the understanding about strata at that point of purchase. And that is where our conveyancers are one-on-one with their clients who are purchasing strata properties. What is it that they are telling our prospective strata owners about strata that help them then come through as new owners and live more peacefully, have that smooth transition if they haven't lived in strata before, to living in strata, understanding what bylaws are, understanding what to expect. So Amanda Bennett at Elan Legal has put me forward as a person who should be able to help these conveyancers to better understand strata and call out to and give their clients the need to know before they actually settle on their property. So there will be a webinar on Saturday, the 25th of July, just a couple of weeks' time. It is for conveyancers, lawyers, people who are involved in that transaction at the time of purchasing a strata property. Rochelle's going to put the link in the comments there for where you can register for the webinar. It is through the Australian Institute of Conveyancing New South Wales division, a Saturday morning webinar, what you need to be telling your clients about strata properties when they are purchasing. So as I said, not something that I have done before, but really, really excited to be delivering that new style, new format of education to conveyancers. And let's see if we can do our bit to improve the education of those who are new to our strata properties. So that is happening in a couple of weeks' time. The next thing that is happening, also on a Saturday, I'm just realizing the next week, Saturday, the 8th of August, I'm going to have a couple of busy weekends. I am involved in renew.org.au. They run an event called Speed Date a Sustainability Expert, and I am lucky enough to be one of their sustainability experts. This is a virtual event. It is Saturday the 8th of August at 1 p.m. and it is an event put on in partnership between Randwick Council, Waverley Council, Wallara Council, and my understanding, I haven't done it before, but my understanding is you can log on and they will match you up with an expert who can help you learn about turning your apartment into a more sustainable place as well, your own residence as well as your strata building. What is it that we can do to make our homes and our common areas more sustainable? I am there as the legal expert from the legal point of view, letting you know what you need to look out for when you are making these sustainability improvements to your home and to your building. So looking forward to speed dating any of you who would like to come and learn more about sustainability. Rochelle is going to pop that link in there to register for the event. I think it will be super, super fun. I think it's something that they usually do in person. New World Order, this is where we're at, guys. Everybody, I think, is just getting better and better at putting on these virtual events and finding new ways to make them more and more engaging and exciting for us. So I am happy to be part of those events. I am just looking over at our comments here and seeing who else we've got coming in. If you are here and you are looking forward to hearing from our guest expert all about fire protection, very serious yet very important topic that we need to be across. And I have a feeling, look, I've been chatting to Rob just offline earlier, and we ain't going to be all that serious. I can tell you that. There's going to be a bit of fun there. It is Friday. It is happy hour. If you are here, give me a hello in the comments. I'm going to head over and see who we've got coming in. I can see Sean, all having a chat there together. All of my Seans are here. Hello to Heidi. Good to see you. Cheers to you, Heidi. Gary, hello. Carol is here. Hello. Charles, how you doing? Rob's already peeked in and is saying hello. Good to see you, Zlata. And thank you, Rochelle. All those links are coming out a little bit long there, guys. So I hope that they are working at your end if you want to go and check those out. Chris is here. The Warden of Melbourne will be here shortly with our drinks. How are you doing, Chris? How are you holding up down there? If you were here earlier, I was giving you my sympathies. Those of you over the border, we are thinking of you from over here. Excellent. Okay, now Michelle is here. I know Michelle is off for an enjoyable long weekend. She's not crossing any borders, and she's just saying here that she's waiting for her son still to pick her up. He's running late. Bloody boys. Tell you what, I've got one of those too, Michelle. He can't drive yet though, but yeah, you can teach me all about that when the time comes. And hello to Fiona, who is saying thank you for the topic today. It is much needed. Awesome. Well, Fiona, with that, we are going to get into our topic for today. I am going to welcome in our very special guest expert, Rob Broadhead. Now, as well as being the CEO of 2025 Protection, Rob is a graduate of the Institute of Fire Engineers, an accredited fire safety practitioner, and a member of Fire Protection Australia's New South Wales Coordinating Committee. Rob has been in the fire protection industry since 1992, has contributed to Australian standards, and has helped draft fire protection training for Strata Communities Association. Rob is passionate about improving general knowledge around fire safety so that building occupants and owners can make good decisions about fire protection before the worst occurs. Now, I am very happy to be bringing to you today Rob Broadhead. I am pressing this button to bring Rob onto the screen around about now. Hi, Rob.
Happy Friday, Amanda. Happy Friday, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Happy Friday, and cheers to you. Now, that is a rather special glass of wine I think you have there, Rob. And I'm seeing a few special bottles of wine there behind you. Interesting selection you have there at the head office of 2025 Protection. Do you want to tell us what's going on there?
We might have a slight side hustle in wine. When we moved into this factory here, we realized we had a lot of space, and all of our friends had gotten into a habit of just asking us to mix up a case for them from our personal collection. And so we thought one day, when a friend needed a charity event for their niece who was quite sick, we thought, oh, let's just start this wine company that we always joked about doing. So we started a little side hustle called Wines That Shine. So we basically collect wines that we like and sell them online.
Nice one.
Way more interesting than fire protection. Far more interesting.
Wow, you could have, it's not called Fire and Wine. It's Wines That Shine. There we go.
Yep. So today I'm drinking a 2017 single vineyard Chardonnay from Eden Valley. It's a Brockenchak Charlie J. It's delicious. So
oh wow. I'm a little bit jealous. You did hint to me, Rob, when we were talking about doing this, that you had some wines that you wouldn't mind sending over to me. And I said, no, can't accept any gifts here. And not that I need to be bribed by you, because you have been a previous podcast guest twice now, and this is our third time having a chat, and it is not everyone that gets to be a guest for 3 times within less than 12 months. So
I mean,
there is
lucky, aren't I?
Well, that's the message I'm trying to send to you. And no, I haven't been bribed with wine. The reason why you have been on the show numerous times in the last 12 months is because there is some really important stuff happening in your space in the fire protection area. And I did mention just there that you'd been on the podcast a couple of times. I meant to say this in the intro. Podcast episode 178. That was back in September last year. We were talking about how our strata owners and our buildings might find a competent fire safety professional. And there's a reason why we use those words, competent fire safety professional. And then just recently, a couple of months ago, episode 208, we talked about an accreditation that was being set up for our fire safety professionals. So that was really the last time we chatted, that's where we left off. And Rob, you reached out to me a little while ago, not about wines, but about an update on where we're at with this accreditation program for fire safety professionals. So do you want to kick off there? Let me know what has happened very recently.
Yeah, so when we first met back in September, we were talking about that there was going to be something coming to help strata owners and managers find a competent fire safety practitioner to do their annual fire safety statements and the like. And then in April, we were talking about the accreditation scheme was here and was due to be gazetted by the government and put in place so that it was effectively made legitimate. That was because of COVID. That was put off for a few months, and so I reached out this week because 1st of July it actually was gazetted. The accreditation scheme for competent fire safety practitioners is now in place and is required. So it's a really exciting time for the industry, and I think it's really exciting for strata owners as well to be able to have a simpler way to find out who is competent. So
now,
yeah,
just
good change.
Yeah, just to give some of our viewers who may not be up on our past podcast chats or what the law is in this area in New South Wales, this goes back to 2017, I believe it was, when we had a series of reforms to our environmental planning and assessment regulation in New South Wales, and it required building owners to employ a competent fire safety practitioner or engage a competent fire safety practitioner to do things like, the most relevant of which in a strata building is to do your annual audit of your fire safety devices and sign off on your annual fire safety statement. So a couple of years ago, we were all a little bit concerned that all of a sudden we had to engage this competent fire safety practitioner, and we didn't know what that person was. What qualifications are they supposed to have? We have to comply with this requirement, but where do we go to find these people? So we understood that there was an accreditation process coming along, and that Fire Protection Australia was involved in that. And what you're now telling us, Rob, is that accreditation is done, is up and running, and our buildings and managers can go somewhere to find a list, I imagine, of accredited fire safety practitioners.
That's exactly right, Amanda. Yep. So there's now an actual list of accredited practitioners, and it's searchable. You can find all those people in there. I think I've provided you with a link, which will be which I'm sure you put up there. It's on the FPAA Connect website, and so that's where you can find an accredited practitioner, but you can also go there to check, is your current accredited practitioner actually accredited for the things you need them to do. So this accreditation scheme is accrediting individuals, not companies, individuals, to be able to endorse, which basically means sign off, the individual fire protection measures on a building. So, you might be might be accredited to endorse sprinklers, smoke detectors, fire extinguishers. Maybe you're not accredited to do the other things in there. So, but it provides one location, this link on the FPAA Connect website, where you, as the strata manager or strata owner, can easily look up and see, is the person and within the company that I'm engaging to do my fire protection, do they have all of the accreditation areas required for our building? And so it's a really, really great step because, as you said, it changed in October 17 to the wording of competent fire safety practitioner, and from that point onwards, it kind of, arguable how this plays out in law. You'd be much better at talking about this than I, but it basically put the onus on the strata manager or the strata owners to work out whether I was competent. And so who knows whether my degree in fire protection from Islamabad University actually,
if you have one,
I don't have one, no. Say if I did have that particular thing, how do you know if that really means I'm competent or not? It was left in the hands of the owners and the strata managers, which is complex.
Yes, and frustrating. And this is the frustration I was talking about in my email this afternoon. Anybody who gets is on our list and gets the updates just prior to happy hour, where I set out who we're chatting to and what we're chatting about. I said, I live in a strata building, and I understand completely the frustration when you have one person from one company come and look at your smoke detectors, your fire hose reels, your extinguishers, your fire doors 1 year and says they're all fine. And then someone comes out the year later and says, well, they're not compliant. You start to think, what qualifications, experience does this person have to be able to tell me what is and isn't compliant in these areas? Was that, I imagine that was the push behind this accreditation system, this was a common complaint.
Without
doubt. Why is that happening? Was that just a lack of education, training? Why do we get those differences of opinion when it comes to fire protection in strata schemes in particular?
Exactly that, Amanda. There has been a complete absence of training, of accreditation, of licensing, of policing, of any of those things across the fire protection industry, or for most of the building, the post-built environment. There's been very little in the way of requirements for anyone to be licensed or accredited or be adequately trained. And so therefore, while there is a lot of people out there who are probably incredibly competent and very well trained and very well read as to the standards, the laws and the requirements, there is probably equally a collection of people who have not read the standards, do not know what they really say, do not know how to adequately assess the fire protection measures in that building, and therefore what we've ended up with is, and there's been no consequences to do it, which is the scariest thing. Anyone, it's really on the owners. It's the owner's responsibility to make sure that the fire protection measures are compliant or performing correct, is what the correct wording, not the fire protection company, even though they may be engaged to do so. So what this is really doing is more clearly defining the roles, making sure that there's a baseline of knowledge and therefore competence and therefore training for the people who are doing this function in your buildings.
Yes. And something that we talked about when we chatted on the podcast is that people will be accredited. And the way it's supposed to work is that people will be accredited for different things, if you like. I'll leave the terminology to you, but somebody who is able to assess sprinklers is not necessarily able to assess smoke alarms or fire extinguishers. So how do we find out whether the fire safety professional who our strata manager is sending to our building has all the ticks required to assess everything that's in our building? So if we go to, I think it's the last link there that's showing Rochelle has put in the comments for us. If we go to the register and we search somebody's name, and you've said it's the individual's name, not the company's name, what do we see or expect to see to make us comfortable, or should make us comfortable, that they're the right person for the job?
So it's while it's an additional task we all have to do, it really is helping to better define the roles. What you need to do once you go into that register, search for the person who is going to be your competent fire safety practitioner or your accredited practitioner. We'll get into that in a second. And the other thing you need to have in front of you is your annual fire safety statement for your building. So the annual fire safety statement of your building has a listing of the equipment that you have in there and the standard that they need to comply with, the performance standard. And so what you really need to do as a Strata owner or manager or person checking on these things is look at your annual fire safety statement. Pick maybe the top line, which might be fire detection and alarm systems. The next step is look at the register. I'm sorry, I'm looking at one right now.
No, go for it, yeah.
Do I have, does the person who is my CFSP have the accreditation? Are they accredited to assess the performance of automatic fire detection alarm systems? If yes, tick. Next thing, exit signs. It's on my list. Is it on this list? Tick. Yes, no. So that's really how the Strata owners and managers can ensure that the competent fire safety practitioner is accredited for the measures for their building. And it's a case-by-case basis. It's every building has a different annual fire safety statement. So for every building, you need to check that your competent fire safety practitioner is accredited for those measures.
Yeah, and I know we've got quite a few Strata managers tuning in here, and I'd be saying to those Strata managers, great tip there from Rob, have a look at the annual fire safety statement, get onto the registry, and if the person who the building, your client building, has always used doesn't have an accreditation in some of those items that are listed on the AFSS, then your job as Strata manager is to let your committee know that and to say, hey, I've looked up on the registry, I've noticed that they aren't accredited. Am I right, Rob, that the Fire Protection Australia is the only accreditation system currently approved by the government?
That's correct. That is exactly correct. Yep, it's the only scheme that is approved for this at this time.
Okay, so that's where we need to be looking to make sure that we have the right people for the job. And if you're a Strata manager, I urge you to go and have a play around there and maybe type in some names of some fire guys, as they are, fire guys that you've been using, and see the list under their names. Do you sense, Rob, that most people who are in the industry doing this work for Strata buildings are now accredited, or they're doing that now and they're catching up? What do we expect to see? What should we expect to see when we go into this registry and have a poke around?
I've not assessed it perfectly, but I'm going to say that most of the reputable firms are already on that list and already have people in there. Right. There's certainly, when the feedback I've had from the association when I've talked to them is that there's still quite a few people who are pushing back, who don't really believe this is in place, who are still yet to even start this process. So as Strata owners and managers, it's really important you're checking this long before your annual fire safety statement is due, because there's no point proceeding with the contractor if they don't have it now, because any annual fire safety statement produced from this moment onwards requires someone who is on that list and is accredited for those individual measures. So very important we're all checking. And so to probably touch on Sean O'Day's comment just below, more and more duties for Strata managers. Yes, but on the flip side, what is really happening is, rather than the Strata manager almost saying, I believe Rob is competent, and therefore he can sign it off, and something going wrong, has a reasonably direct route to, Sean, if he's the Strata manager's PI insurance, if it goes wrong. If Sean has picked someone from this list and determined that they actually are competent and accredited for that item, it's a much more direct route to the PI insurance of the competent fire safety practitioner. So while, yes, there's additional duty, there's a reduced risk.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Rob, and I do like that. We were thrown into, committees and Strata managers were thrown into this no man's land when we had to had a responsibility to find this competent fire safety practitioner, not knowing who we were looking for, and we now have that registration process to check against. We keep saying these words, and you've used the acronym CFSP, Confidence Fire Safety Practitioner, if I've got that out right. My understanding is, and you teed me up to this, Rob, the terminology may have changed. We're now calling them something different.
Yeah, I'm going to switch from drinking from the glass to the bottle now.
Okay. It's that bad, is it?
No. It's not really that bad. It's just very frustrating. So in their wisdom, after 2 years of us, or 3 years, I suppose, almost, of us talking about competent fire safety practitioners and only just getting that to roll off our tongues properly, the government, when they gazetted the CFSP regime, the competent fire safety practitioner regime, into legislation, they decided to change the name of it. So
right,
it is no longer a competent fire safety practitioner from last week onwards. It's actually an accredited practitioner, in brackets, fire safety. So
an accredited practitioner, fire safety.
Fire safety. So I assume we will eventually be all calling them APFSs, but it doesn't seem to roll off the tongue quite easily.
You need an APFS to do your AFSS. ASAP.
ASAP. Really sick of acronyms. But anyway, so we can probably just keep calling them CFSPs, to be honest, because the version 3 of the annual fire safety statement document still refers to competent fire safety practitioners and CFSPs. So I think we can assume they're one and the same thing, but slowly but surely, I imagine the terminology is going to move across to accredited practitioner fire safety. So that's a challenge for us all to get our tongues and heads around.
Okay, I am just going to head over to these comments. Zlata is saying, if your Strata company never asked for testing of fire dampers in apartments previously, why would they be doing it suddenly now? Sounds like you might be going by some first-hand experience there, Zlata. This is something that sounds like may have come up in your building. Rob, in your experience, fire dampers, that's something that we have to look at to sign off our annual fire safety statements, if you got them?
Without a doubt, they absolutely need to be inspected. With an annual fire safety statement, it requires you to inspect and verify the performance of the systems, either because there's a schedule, so that's the list of the measures provided by council, or because, I can't remember the exact wording of it, basically, but assuming that they are actually there. If they've been installed in the building, they should also be being signed off. So it doesn't really come down to whether they never asked for them or not. If they're there, the owners are effectively obligated to have those things inspected and verified. It's slightly arguable because it depends on whether council has actually requested it or not. But really, the owners are responsible for them, irrespective of whether council has actually asked for it or not. So I would suggest that there's 1,000 reasons that question could be being asked and how it came around. But really, if they're there, they should be being inspected, tested, and their performance verified.
And that's a very good example there, Zlata, of what I was talking about earlier, the frustration that you as owners have when one company 1 year doesn't look at a particular aspect of the building's fire protection system, and then another year they are, and you're left thinking, geez, I'm glad somebody's looking at them. I thought they would have been inspected. When you get told that extinguishers are out of date by 3 years, and you think, well, interesting that they weren't out of date by 3 years last year. That's concerning when we're talking about the safety of the occupants in our building. So hopefully getting the right person for the job, we now know where to go to find the right person for the job, is going to assist with those issues. I can see an absolutely there from Sean O'Day. I think that's in agreement with what you were saying earlier there, Rob. Sean McNamara, also a Strata manager I know, is saying that if a Strata management firm has a compliance or fire department, they should be confirming the correct consultants. Otherwise, for smaller players, it may fall to the individual managers to go and be looking up that register, as you're saying there, Sean. Yes, absolutely. Your larger firms would have that process in place and be able to hopefully give you individual managers the names, the list of people who you use and should be recommending to your or using for your buildings, so that you can stay with the reputable accredited firms.
But as I think just to come back around on that one, Amanda, to answer Sean's one, if this while it's annoying, I can imagine for the Strata manager or their department to have to check this, they are reducing risk to their own PI and their own liability by doing this, because they're actually, rather than them guessing or hoping, or what do the Americans say when everyone shoots in the school, hoping and praying that it's right. They're checking a list that is underpinned by legislation. They're checking whether that person actually is competent. So they're reducing their own risk. I think so. It's annoying they have to do it. It's an additional task for them to do it, but it is reducing risk.
Yeah. Great question here from Sean O'Day. Can this responsibility for checking the register be passed on to the Strata committee? Interesting one, Sean. Well, first of all, from the legal perspective, I'd be saying, what is in your agency agreement? What is your duty as a Strata manager? What is it that you have agreed to provide to the owners corporation? And I'm not sure. You guys tell me. Do you have a clause in your Strata management agency agreement, or an agreed service as opposed to an additional service that you will facilitate the completion of the annual fire safety statement? In my experience, that is something that my Strata manager just does, organizes. We see a sign up on our notice board one day or in the lift saying so-and-so firm is coming to inspect the smoke alarms and you need to be home between these times. It's something that is facilitated by the Strata manager, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was a line item in the agreed services where the Strata manager is responsible for doing that. Now, absolutely, it would be open to the committee to say, well, I don't want to use that company who you always use. I want to use this company because I've heard they're good, or they're cheaper, or my brother is a partner in that, whatever it is. Then as a Strata manager, you follow that instruction. But I think as Rob's saying, to cover yourselves, if you know that this person is not qualified because you've checked the register, or your compliance department has a cross against them, or they're not on your list of preferred suppliers for your business, that your company that you work for, you should be telling the Strata committee to beware of that, and being clear that as a Strata manager, you're not going to be taking any responsibility should something go wrong. So for that reason, I feel uncomfortable about shifting that responsibility directly over to the Strata committee. You are a professional Strata manager. You are attuned to issues like this because you're here today, because you're clever and engaged. You know that this is something that you need to be on top of, and your owners who are paying you to provide that management service to them are not necessarily on top of it. So yes, I can see your second comment there. If not, why not? Hopefully I've answered that for you, Sean. Happy to get into that one further. I think that's a good question.
I guess, Amanda,
sorry,
with that
Rob,
one there, that one really comes down, I think, to who is responsible for what in all of these things. So irrespective of the accreditation scheme, irrespective of the Strata managers agreement, the owners of the building are wholly responsible for the building having fire safety systems and that are performing correctly. So none of this involves the owners of the responsibility to make sure those things are performing correctly. However, as a Strata manager, by having the committee do it, I think you just run the risk that you are the thing that you're being employed to do, which is to check and give them advice, correct advice as to whether they are safe, they're doing the right thing or not. That might be brought into question, I suppose, if you've just given them that responsibility and it turns out not to be correct.
Yeah.
So
I have to say, too many times I see Strata managers being criticised for not providing guidance, not pointing their committees in the right direction, not being alert to, for example, if we think about building defects and warranties under the Home Building Act, these are things that as Strata managers, if you're managing a new building, you have to be alert to this, and you have to be saying to your committees, time is coming up, we should get some advice, we should get a report, we should engage a lawyer. If you don't do these things, then you're opening yourself up to, at best, or at its lightest, criticism, and at its heaviest, a legal action against you. So I think this falls into that same camp. Another one of those examples where you know this needs to be done. You should know that it needs to be done by someone who is competent. How do we know who's competent? We check the register. If the Strata committee wants to go ahead, and I think Sean McNamara has said this, the Strata committee wants to go ahead with their person, and we know that they're not somebody who is appropriately qualified, then as long as we've told them, you've done your bit, as I say, you advise, they decide. But I do think that as a Strata manager, you should be giving that advice, that it should be someone who is accredited. Okay.
Yes, if they are signing it off instead of you, of course, they can do the checking.
Yep. And just some comments there between our Sean's about what is and isn't in agreements, and that may be an additional service that the Strata manager charges for if they're going to do that task. Fair enough. And Sean's saying, as a committee member, I would not accept that role. Yeah, that's how I feel as a committee member, Sean. And I'm someone who probably knows more than most when it comes to what the rules and regulations are. But there are quite a few things that I will revert to my Strata manager and say, you tell us what to do. And my dear Strata manager loves me for that. And here we go. We have a comment here from Bill and Ben. Hello, Bill and Ben. I didn't say hello to you earlier. You should be able to find this on a standard SCA agreement. Arrange AFSS inspections required in order to ensure compliance with the Environmental Planning Assessment Act. It will then specify if it's an agreed service or an additional service. Yep, excellent. That was the kind of thing, Bill and Ben, I was thinking would be in the agreements. Wonderful. Okay. Awesome discussion here going on. If you have, I'm mindful of the time, and if you have, this is around about the time where I call for questions of our guest expert. If you have some fire questions, you hopefully should know by now what Rob is across when it comes to these regular inspections for our annual fire safety statements, what our I keep calling them devices. They're not called that, Rob, are they? What do we call the things that protect us from fire in a building? Fire safety.
Complex essential fire safety measures.
There we go. Measures. They're not devices, they're measures. Of course they are. That makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Okay, so Rob knows all about your essential fire safety measures. So if you have questions around those items that you would like Rob to answer, please feel free to pop them there into the comments. I have a question for Rob. Rob, what would you say is the most common fault, if you like, or missing fire safety measure, fault in a fire safety measure, whether we're talking, I'm not sure if your experience is more so with established buildings or brand new buildings. What do you see time and again? What do your guys see when they go in to do these inspections time and again?
In new buildings, without a doubt, it's door gaps, fire door gaps.
Door gaps. Fire door gaps.
Fire door gaps, so gaps around the fire door that exceed what the standard permits. So that's probably the most common one in new buildings, and it's reasonably common in existing buildings as well.
Tell me this.
For different reasons.
So, okay, so we have a fire door, which is our front doors here, fire doors, fire stairs. What gaps are we supposed to have? I've never heard about this.
Fire doors are a really interesting thing. So let's taking a step back. A fire door is really just an openable fire wall. So in a strata apartment, it's supposed to be compartmentalized from the rest of the building, just like the Titanic was supposed to be. It was supposed to be, locked off. And so a fire door is the way to create a firewall that can be moved. But once there's actually a fire in place and things are burning, that fire door's job is to be fire rated, and it does that by basically expanding out into its frame, and the frame is usually metal with concrete inside it. It expands out into it and locks itself into place.
Right.
Okay. And so
under heat.
Under heat, yes.
Yeah.
And so that effectively creates a firewall, meaning that you can have a fire in your apartment. It should not affect the people outside your apartment. You can have a fire outside your apartment. It theoretically should not affect you in your apartment, et cetera, et cetera. So, but with fire doors, the whole concept is that they expand and then squeeze out into the frame. And so they have very small gaps that they must have around the door itself. So it's about 3 millimeters as the maximum around the outside. There's some slight variation for different types of doors, but call it 3 millimeters around. And so if it has more than 3 millimeters, if it was to heat up, it would probably heat up, the hinges would fail, it would fall on the ground, the fire would spread. And so, yeah, the very most common defect we find in new buildings and in fact in old is door gaps, because they are so small.
Too small.
Too big.
Sorry, the gaps are too big, right?
The gaps are too big. So the door would, if it was to expand out, may not click itself into the frame and may just fall out, and we no longer have a fire rating.
And how do you fix that? You fix the wall of the door.
In the case of the side, they're usually special seals you can fit to them.
Right.
Ditto to the top, and then there's often a special drop-down seal that can be fitted to the bottom of the door to take up some level of gap at the bottom. But that's definitely the most common one we find in new buildings, because it is a really it's a really complex job to fit a fire door correctly. Getting them with that smaller gap, yet still being able to close and latch and all the rest reliably is really hard to do. And so, I think in the construction environment, they're just throwing these things up and giving often little care to getting them exactly right when they have to be.
Goodness. Well, that is terrifying. So, and these things would have to be certified for a new building. And there we are back in the circle of failed certification systems and certificates being issued without proper inspection. So we won't get into that kind of worms, but that's interesting. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, so that's the most common one in new buildings. In existing, it's sometimes gaps, but on doors, because the hinges start falling off and things like that, just from wear and tear. But probably in existing buildings, the most common one is exit and emergency lights.
Okay.
Those failing. So, as a Strata committee, as a Strata manager, you've pretty much got to assume that you're going to have a number of exit and emergency lights fail every year, because you've got this light which is always on, always has a battery inside it, is always charging that battery, and then once a year, to test it, you go and do the worst thing possible for the battery and turn the power off to it for 90 minutes, draining the battery and putting the load on the charger and creating more heat. So they essentially, I think back in the old days, before we got LED lights, we were talking at about 5% failure per year was pretty normal when benchmarking. These days, I think it's more like about the 2 or 3% mark with LED lights, because they create less heat. Okay.
Oh, interesting. And these lights are often in places that people are not traveling past all that often. They're in your fire exits and in your fire stairs, and we're not noticing that they're out. But at least that is a reasonably straightforward fix.
Correct. Yeah, reasonably easy to fix those ones.
Yep. Now I'm seeing a comment here from Layla, who is saying, shouldn't this be assessed before final building approval for new buildings? I think, Layla, you might have typed that before I said this is a demonstration with these fire doors that do not have the correct gaps of our failed certification system. You're exactly right. This shouldn't be happening. Buildings shouldn't be signed off when don't have compliant fire doors. That is just terrifying.
In a perfect world, Amanda, and to everyone, a building should be perfect. We shouldn't have to go in there and re-certify it. We should simply be maintaining and checking that it continues to perform the way it did. But this is all going a bit arse about, if you will, because we're trying to fix things that probably should have been right in the first place a lot of the time in these, and then it's further exacerbated by the fire protection contractors, the inconsistency of it, because we've had no accreditation ourselves. So you're getting different opinions from different people in different years. And so, between this accreditation scheme, hopefully bringing consistency to the fire industry, and we've got David Chandler and the building commissioners' efforts to try and bring consistency to the built environment earlier on. We hopefully, it's still going to take a few years for this to wash out all of the defects, but I think, in a few years' time, it's going to move much more to that. Build it right in the first place, and then simply maintain it going forward.
Yes, That's the plan anyway. Crystal is asking an excellent question here. Do the essential accredited fire guys, thank you, Crystal, that's what I call them too, fire guys, undertake ongoing professional development to keep their accreditation current? Or once you're in the register, are you sorted?
That's a really great question. And the answer is absolutely, professional development is continuing. So this accreditation scheme and this accreditation list that we have here is only the interim. It's almost only an interim register.
Yep.
We have passed 30 odd exams to prove we have an adequate level of knowledge. We've signed up for insurance that covers us for this function, and we've signed up to a code of practice. But most importantly, we've signed up for, within 4 years, we will have passed an actual a course to prove this and have gone through a certain number of CPD points every year. So without a doubt, this is a accreditation and professional development scheme with training and qualifications coming later.
Yeah, and I did notice that there are audit provisions in there where the government will come along and check that FPA is doing everything that it said it was going to do with this accreditation
10%.
scheme. Yep.
10% of every annual fire safety statement issued.
Yep.
Will
Great.
be audited, which is great.
Perfect. Okay, thank you, Crystal. That was a really good question. I'm seeing a question here from Scott. I might need some more information, Scott. I assume old blocks have the same responsibility. Is that correct? Do you mean there, Scott, to submit an AFSS and ensure that all the essential measures are in place? I did see an earlier question there from Sean about buildings that don't need to submit an AFSS. I've had that question before, Rob. And Sean, sorry, Scott, Sean, Rob. Scott, if you want to give me a clarifying note there, please go ahead. But is it right, Rob, that every building that has essential fire measures has to submit an AFSS? I'm not putting it on the spot.
There's some argument as to buildings constructed prior to 1988, I think is the correct year,
right,
whether they did or did not. But there would be very few buildings where nothing has changed since 1988. So it's unlikely that there's many buildings other than incredibly small ones where nothing's changed since 1988. So I think you can safely assume, and certainly as a strata manager, I think it would be dangerous to assume that they don't require an annual fire safety statement for any measures they have installed in the building.
And so, because
yes, you could possibly legally argue it for buildings pre-1988 in certain cases, but I think it's probably dangerous to do so.
And I think I have suggested to clients who've asked this before that the best place to find out is your local council, because that is the place to which the AFSS is sent and lodged, if you like, and they'd be the ones who could quickly look it up for you and say, yes, we need one, or no, we don't. I would have thought. Yep.
Correct. Yeah, but Scott's asked, built in the 1970s. So, yeah, I think we've answered that one in that possibly awesome. No, but I think you should safely assume yes, because it'll be required anytime soon anyway, when any upgrades have to occur.
Comment here from Sean McNamara. The building commissioner is shaking up certification, but it won't impact new builds for a couple of years yet. Yeah, that's correct there. I agree with you, Sean. Chris has got to go.
Yeah, I think he is actually getting into it right now in buildings. I was in a meeting with him only a week or so ago, and he's already visiting lots and lots and lots of new builds and forcing them to do it correctly. So it will show up pretty quickly.
Yeah. Upcoming topic for the podcast, definitely. We have this new building legislation, regime of building legislation. Some has commenced, some hasn't. And I do have a topic coming up to bring to all of you to flesh that one out a bit more. I was just saying thanks to Chris Sargent, who has to go, but great drink session. Thank you, Chris. I hope all improves for you down there in Victoria. Sean saying different configurations of buildings suggest smoke versus heat detectors. Oh, yes, I think Michelle raised a point about heat detectors versus smoke detectors. Is a heat detectors a modern thing? What's the difference there, Rob?
Smoke detectors are detect smoke, obviously. Heat detectors detect heat.
Yep.
In very simple terms, a smoke detector is a life safety device. A heat detector is a building safety device. So the heat detector will tell the fire brigade that there is a fire there, but chances are if you've got heat detectors in your living space or your sleeping space, you would be somewhat dead before that actually got up to a temperature where the people would be called. That's why the smoke alarm legislation requires everyone to have a working smoke alarm in their apartment, irrespective of whether they have heat detectors or smoke detectors or otherwise.
Because it's the smoke that kills.
Yes. But yeah, the question is a bit too broad because every building requires a different a config of devices depending on when it was built, what standard it was built to, how big it is, what the usage is, etc.
Okie dokie. This looks like an interesting question here from Andy. Thank you, Andy. I don't know how much of that you can see there, Rob. We see fire contractors regularly discuss mandatory upgrades due to fire standards that aren't referenced on the fire safety schedule. Should the AFSS only be undertaken to the fire schedule, or are there other Australian standards that are mandatory but not necessarily on the schedule?
The schedule is the Bible. The only thing that there's I think two exceptions, and I'll get into that in a sec. But essentially, what is on the schedule is the only thing you're responsible to do until such time as the regulatory authority, and that is really council or the fire brigade, require you to do otherwise. So there shouldn't be any mandatory upgrades. The only exceptions to that rule is smoke alarms under the smoke alarm legislation or the Residential Tenancies Act just recently. That's a grandfather clause where every apartment requires a smoke alarm. And if you happen to have a aged care facility, you need residential sprinklers in there. But those are the only two grandfather mandatory upgrades that could even be spoken of. The rest of them, the annual fire safety statement and what is listed on there is your Bible until council or the fire brigade tells you otherwise. It's not up to a fire contractor.
So Andy, if you do have a fire contractor telling you that you have a mandatory upgrade, perhaps put that ball back in their court and ask them to explain to you why that is the case when it's not on the schedule.
Exactly.
And check that they're accredited. Excellent.
Amanda, before we go, we talked about a couple of things when we were discussing earlier.
Yep.
You asked the difference between being accredited and a provider of choice on the Fire Protection Association.
Yes, when I had a poke around the website, I saw a couple of buttons, and I'm looking at this through the lens of a manager who's going to hit that website, be looking who's on the register, and then there was a button saying provider of choice, and it looked to me like the providers of choice were different to the accredited practitioners.
You're exactly right. But they are connected in a way. So FPAS, or the Fire Protection Accreditation Scheme, is something that's been in place since 2013 and was put together by the Fire Protection Association of Australia with the intent of raising the standard, raising the quality of the fire industry. That's been around since 2013, and people and businesses who have gone through that voluntary scheme can become providers of choice. So we've gone through training, we've gone through courses and that sort of thing to do it, but it's a voluntary scheme that is promoted by the fire industry, the Fire Protection Association of Australia, to try and raise the quality of our industry. To confuse things, the CFSP regime is one component of that FPAS system. So when this system was gazetted, they only effectively legislated that the fire safety assessor, which is the person who endorses your annual fire safety statement, and the fire system designer were the only aspects of the FPAS scheme, the provider of choice that was actually legislated. So I think it's a great idea to pick a provider of choice as far as the company, but that doesn't absolve you of the need to choose to ensure that the individual person, e.g., the CFSP, is accredited for your measures.
Very good. Thank you, Rob, for clarifying that. And we will just pop in there, Rochelle, who is helping me in the background, that very last link that is on the notes there, Rochelle, so that everyone who is here has that direct access to the register to be able to find an accredited fire safety practitioner. My goodness, another hour already gone, flown by, as it does. Thank you very much, Rob, for spending happy hour with us, filling us in on this very important topic. We've had plenty of viewers here enjoying and engaging, and cheers to you. Yes, thank you for sharing your wines as well. We'll, I think the link to your side hustle there, as you call it, was further up the feed, and we might get Rochelle to pop that in as well if anyone wants to check out Wines That Shine.
If you put in the discount code Strata in caps, it'll give you a 5% discount and free shipping. So
we even have a discount. Okay, so you go to the website, you put the discount code Strata in caps, and you get a discount and free shipping.
Yes, indeed. So enjoy.
Thank you so much, Rob. And we'll be catching up again soon. I keep saying to all my virtual guests, I'll see you again soon in person. Maybe, maybe not.
One day.
2022. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's good to see you, and we will see you all next time.
Thanks, Amanda. Thank you all.
See ya.